Hey, I'm so stoked that you're here. I can't wait to get this float to handstand practice going and get you flying into your yoga practice. The beauty about this practice is that it's not just kicking up into a handstand and getting the handstand. It's about building the foundation. For me, learning how to float in my vinyasa practice allowed me to really strengthen the foundation, and not only I can do handstands, I can do so much more than that. It requires a lot of control in our body. So the more we become aware of our movements rather than just trying to find a balance, we build strength and control throughout the body. So I hope that this program will teach you a lot about yourself, and hopefully not just learning how to handstands, but rather understanding yourself a little bit deeper, and that you are capable of so much more than you think, and really tearing down the limiting beliefs. And it's not just consistency, it's about being consistent but learning through the process, not constantly doing the same thing, because we don't want to be a hamster in a wheel, right? Constantly doing the same thing, but you're stuck at the same spot. So I'm going to teach you how to really progress into this practice using our nervous system. So let's begin. Let's begin to understand our foundation. In our vinyasa practice, we do a lot of jump forwards and backs, and this is the perfect opportunity for you to start to become aware of your positioning, learning how to control your negatives, your float. And just like in all inversions, it requires a lot of pushing. So I'm going to go through step by step, and we're going to build through this foundation throughout this program, and I'm gonna take you all the way through advanced poses. And you can always come back into this program, because this is basically the training wheel for you to keep progressing in your practice. Now we start first from our hands, because this is the foundation. We are balancing on our hands. So it's your ability to press down, so the strength of your wrist flexion. This also requires in your arm balance. So pressing down onto your palms, so strength of your wrist flexion and the mobility of your wrist extension. And your ability to press down on your knuckles, especially your index and your thumb knuckle, because this will create pronation, allow the pronation of the forearm. Let's begin again. Wrist flexion. We need to be able to press down, especially on our fingers. We use our fingers as brakes. And the way you push down from the palms will stop you from falling backwards. And pronation of the forearm, so your forearm is pronating, internally rotating, and your ability to externally rotate your shoulders. Without pronating the forearm, external rotation of the shoulders is this. Now notice where my fingers goes. It goes to the side. What happens to my forearm? It supinate. I want to be able to pronate, so internally rotating the forearm. What happens? We create forced, torquing. Torquing, which means forces that goes opposite direction. My forearm is internally rotating, and then my shoulder is externally rotating, and that creates strength. Now, protraction of the scapula, so pressing away, separating the shoulder blades away from each other. So you're pressing down, pushing away from the floor, which creates protraction of the scapula. And retraction is squeezing the scapula together. So that's the opposite of what we want to do when we are floating or going into our handstands. We want to be able to protract our scapula. So that is the third part. Fourth part is the elevation of the scapula. Our ability to elevate the shoulders up towards our ears while externally rotating the shoulders and pronating the forearm and extending the wrist, but at the same time you're trying to push down, flexing the wrist to push away to resist the gravity. So the first one is the wrist, second one, external rotation of the shoulder, third one, protraction of the scapula, fourth, elevation of the shoulders towards the ears, fifth, your ability to pull the ribs in. Pull the ribs in, protracting through the scapula as you pull the ribs in. Sixth, your ability to separate the movement of the pelvis. So, posterior tilt of the pelvis, and then anterior tilt of the pelvis. I know there's a lot to pay attention of, but we're gonna go through this throughout the program. Now, we wanna be able to posteriorly tilt our pelvis and pull the ribs in, protract the scapula, elevate the shoulders up towards your ears, externally rotate the shoulders, and pressing up as you pull the ribs in. Now, your legs, your ability to keep the pelvis tucked and extending the legs back. Extension of the legs and internally rotating the hip. This is when we're trying to find the straight line into our handstands. That's not the goal, but that's part of the goal, okay? Now, when we understand how to flow, to find that lightness to go to the top of the mat, it creates control within the body. So our setup from downward facing dog, again, you're already starting to press down onto your fingers and pressing down onto the palms, especially your index and your thumb knuckles. Then externally rotate the shoulders, pull the ribs in, and then protracting through your scapula. Now, how can you separate the feeling of the pelvis here? So maybe you can do gentle movement of posterior and anterior pelvic tilt. The next one is your ability to activate your lower belly and your upper thighs. Core compression. I can extend my knees to do that as well, but bending my knees, squeezing my belly to my thighs, tucking my pelvis under, and then look between the thumbs. Focusing on really squeezing the lower belly and my upper thighs, activating the hip flexor and the core compression. And what a lot of mistakes that people do when they jump to the top of the mat is that they use their legs to lift the hips up instead of using their upper body to pull the hips up and using your hips to pull the legs up. I know, right? I'll show you what I mean. As I press down, I tuck my pelvis, I keep squeezing my lower belly and the upper thighs. Think of a zipper. I'm zipping this in. I take a big breath and notice the breath can be so helpful when we're jumping to the top of the mat. Taking a diaphragm breath, breathing from the belly, and maybe even holding the breath as you jump forward can allow you to hold certain pressure, intra-abdominal pressure, to create strength as you jump forward, and then you can exhale nice and slow. I would highly recommend to play around with the breath. But when we breathe through our upper chest, the belly goes in and it doesn't create the pressure. When we breathe from the belly, without arching the back, and then squeezing the lower belly and the upper thighs. To sense that activation, perhaps you can try cuffing. Or Kapalbhati breath can be very helpful too. When we forcefully exhale, engages the deep core muscle. But we want to keep the inhalation when we want to hold the intra-abdominal pressure. You take a big breath and you brace. And see if that will help you float forward. So looking between the thumbs, take my big breath. As you might notice, my stomach will expand.
I hold that. Squeezing the lower belly. As you can see, my bottom legs are quite relaxed. My legs are not completely extended. And I focus more on stacking my shoulders over my wrist and my hips over my shoulders. Then pulling my legs in. Because what a lot of mistakes that people do is that they jump forward and they use their legs to come up and completely engaging your legs. Do not engage your legs completely. Engaging this part of your body, pulling them together can make a massive difference. And that's what we are going to be working on throughout this program. And eventually, as we jump forward, when we keep that active, I might be able to just keep my legs extended slightly as I stack, and then getting my legs up into a handstand. To lower down, squeezing the lower belly. Engage that completely and create a resistance to come down as slow as possible. It's not just about repetition. It's about understanding what am I need to pay attention of so that I can progress faster than just repeating constantly. And that's what I'm going to help you with. And working with the nervous system is so underrated, or many people don't do. So I'll be sharing that with you as well. Or some people will start to look way too forward and they jump. Maybe they go forward or they collapse, or the back is really arching. So look between the thumbs, grip the mat, press onto your palms, pull the ribs in, externally rotate your shoulders, elevate the shoulders up towards your ears. Take that big breath, breathe from the belly, look between the hands and try to find that stack. And work on controlling your way down. Falling is part of learning. Sometimes you're going to overshoot and face plant. I've done that many times. Again, it's about learning from our mistakes and think of really resisting the gravity.